Welcome back to a course on complex analysis. In the previous lecture, we started discussing about the Gauss-Arts lemma. Let me recall the statement of the lemma. That is, if a function is analytic throughout a closed region R, the region consists of the points which are interior to a contour as well as the points on the contour, right? And for any positive number epsilon, the region can be covered with a finite number of squares and partial squares, and that can be indexed with j runs from 1 to n, which means what? We mean to say that it can be covered with a finite number of squares and partial squares such that this inequality holds true in all the squares and the partial squares. Okay, so this inequality represents what? This is the estimate. So here we have an estimate. If you take limit z approaches to zj, then this quantity is what? F prime of zj, provided the function is differentiable. Here we assumed that the function is analytic, therefore this is of course a differentiable quantity, and of course this is going to be a zero, right? If z approaches zj, right? Now we'll have to prove satisfied this inequality holds true in the square or a partial square for all of the points z except at the point zj, right? So we mark this inequality as equation 1, and in order to prove this, what we are actually going to do is that we are going to draw lines which are parallel to the real and imaginary axis to with equal distance, so that the region is covered with squares or partial squares, and if there are some squares in which only few part of the region is covered, we subdivide that square and try to cover it with the smaller squares. So we keep on doing it so that all the regions is covered inside some square. Okay, so in any one of the, okay, here the ultimate point is to identify points inside the square such that inequality 1 holds true. If the inequality 1 does not hold true, then we will have to subdivide the square. We'll have to subdivide the squares into a smaller square, and we'll have to check the things. And when we subdivide the thing, if there are some squares which do not cover any point of the region, we neglect that square. Okay, now here is where our proof starts now. Suppose that the point z, j do not exist after subdividing one of the original subregions into a finite number of times, and we get a contradiction. Okay, here by contradiction, what do we mean with it? If we revisit to the statement, we can very well see that the inequality 1 holds true for all the points other than j in the square or a partial square. Okay, we are not able to identify, okay, or there may exist at least one point in the square or a partial square which do not satisfy the requirement. Okay, that is the contradiction. Now what we are going to do is that if there is some subregion, which do not satisfy this condition, let us denote that as sigma naught. Okay, I think I shall write it in black itself. Okay, let me take that as sigma naught. That denote the subregion if it is a square. If it is a partial square, I just complete the partial square into a square, and I denote the sigma naught to the entire square that we are taking, right? So after subdividing sigma naught, okay, so if you've identified this one to be the thing, you can now subdivide. After subdividing, out of these 4 squares, at least one of the 4 smaller squares will contain the points of R, but no appropriate Z, J, right? So that smaller square, we take it as sigma 1. Okay, after this, what we are going to do is that we again subdivide sigma 1, and we are about to continue the same process. Okay, so after a finite number of stages, or after some stage, we get the nested sequence, nested infinite sequence. That is, we started with sigma naught, then sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3, and it goes till sigma k minus 1, sigma k, and it goes. Let us mark this as equation 2. Okay, these are infinite, we get the nested infinite sequence of squares is constructed. We construct this sequence, and there is a point z naught common to each sigma k. Also, each of these squares contains points of the region R other than z naught, which is possible. Okay, now we are just going to pay attention to the sizes of the squares. Okay, here the size of the squares are decreasing. Am I right? So whatever may be the original size of the square, when we subdivide it, we are just going to get only 1/4. Okay, I think if it is so, if a is the total length, then you get a square of length a upon 2. When you again subdivide it, it is a square of length a upon 4. Okay, when we subdivide the squares, the size is decreasing actually, right? And note that, okay, let me write that as a separate point. Note that any delta neighborhood, that is z minus z naught less than delta of the point z naught contains squares when their radius, sorry, so when we talk about the squares, then we talk about the sides or the diagonals. So when the diagonals have length smaller than delta. So what I mean here is that uh, here when you find a neighborhood, let this be my z naught, point z naught, and I have a neighborhood of radius delta, and if I have a square whose diagonal's length is less than delta, okay, diagonal have the length less than delta, so here then I can fit that square inside this neighborhood. Okay, this is what I mean here, right? So with which what we write is that every delta neighborhood z minus z naught less than delta contains a point of R. This tells us that, okay, actually a point of R distinct from z naught. So this means z naught is an accumulation point. So you are, I think some of you, those who are following this course and those who are following the course on real analysis by me, is hearing this term for the first time. Accumulation point means a limit point. Okay, this is the limit point of the region R. Okay, So what kind of region is this? The region R is a closed set. Okay, since this is true, every limit point is a point of R itself. Therefore, the Z naught is a member of R, right? So initially, what we were saying that some point Z naught is there, which is not inside it. Okay, and here we have constructed, and in the nesting of the sequences, we identified the common point, and that is Z naught. And finally, we proved that point is a member of the region itself. Okay, so with which we are going to do few more things. Okay, now let us make use of the analyticity of the function R. Okay, F is analytic throughout R. Okay, in particular, F is analytic at Z naught, which is a point of R, right? Thus, the derivative of the function at Z naught exists. Okay, next we are going to make use of the definition of a derivative. So that is by the definition of derivative for each epsilon positive, there exists a delta neighborhood absolute of Z minus Z naught less than delta, such that absolute of f of Z minus f of Z naught upon Z minus Z naught minus f prime of Z naught less than epsilon is satisfied by all points distinct from Z naught in that neighborhood. So when we talk about the neighborhood, we also have spoken about the squares, right? So here you may very well notice that you are able to fit some square whose diagonal have the length lesser than delta inside that neighborhood. So using that ideology, we are about to actually getting nearer to the conclusion of the lemma. Okay, so but the neighborhood absolute of Z minus Z naught less than delta contains a square sigma k when the integer k is large enough that, okay, I think I don't need to explain much about it. So when the integer value k is large enough, you are able to fit in some square inside the neighborhood, right? So with which we conclude that z naught serves as the point zj in inequality 1 for the subregion consisting of the square sigma k are a part of sigma k. Okay, so whatsoever the value of k, we are able to find out some point in one such that the inequality 1 is satisfied. But we have formed the square sigma k in a way that no point is satisfying this property. No point is satisfying this property. We have formed squares of this sort. Okay, this is a contradiction to the way equation 2 was formed, right? Hence, what? Hence the lemma. So, in a finite subdivision itself, we are able to find out the requirements. That is, the equation one gets satisfied. Okay, so this is the Gauss-Hartz lemma. With the help of a Gauss-Hartz lemma, we are actually going to prove Cauchy-Gauss theorem. And how are we going to do it? This is what we are going to see in the next lecture. Thank you.